So we're here today to talk about the kickoff of the ozone season. Our ozone season officially begins April 1st, and our meteorologists deliver ozone forecasts every day through the ozone season, so through the end of October.
Ozone is a pollutant that's formed in the atmosphere when nitrogen oxides react with volatile organic compounds in the presence of heat and sunlight. And that's really why it's a summertime pollutant, because the heat of the summer really drives that chemical reaction. So here in the southeast, we really focus on NOx emissions as far as how to control our ozone levels, because there's a lot of naturally occurring VOCs that are emitted from trees here in the mountains, and there's nothing we can do about that. So the NOx emissions are our focus, and mainly NOx comes from fuel combustion, from our cars and trucks, and also from power plants.
Since 2002, the Asheville plant has managed to decrease its sulfur dioxide emissions by 96% and its nitrogen oxide emissions by 85%. Also, because of the generation diversity and efficiency and demand for electricity, the Asheville plant has seen a decrease in carbon dioxide emissions of approximately 49% during that same period of time. Additionally, the company had a goal to reduce its fleet fuel consumption by 35% by 2012, and we achieved a 41% reduction in fuel consumption in our fleet during that time. Duke Energy is generating electricity more cleanly and delivering it to customers more reliably and efficiently than ever before, and our rates are below the national average. Over the last decade, the company has invested more than $300 million in environmental upgrades here at the Asheville plant. And it was the first in North Carolina to have advanced, I love this, flue gas desulfurization, aka a scrubber, as outlined by the North Carolina Clean Smokestacks.
Clean Smokestacks Act, or CSA, I want to highlight for you where we were back in 1998 for the nitrogen oxide emissions, one of the precursors to ozone. And our Duke and Progress energy units were emitting about 245,000 tons of nitrogen oxides annually. This represents the emissions cap set forth in the legislation, the Clean Smokestacks Act legislation. And then this is an actual number for 2010, 2011, and 2012. And then based on Duke Energy's compliance plan that was submitted last year, this is the projected emissions of nitrogen oxides from all of the coal-fired plants in North Carolina for 2014. So we have gone from 245,000 tons of NOx, nitrogen oxides, down to 28,832. in 2014, and taking a lot of nitrogen oxide emissions out of the air means improvements in ozone. Same for our sulfur dioxide story. Again, back in 1998, the combined companies were emitting about 489,000 tons of sulfur dioxide each year. There were two caps, emission caps, one for 2009 and one for 2013, established in the legislation. The good news story is that by 2010, actually, the companies were already below the 2013 cap for sulfur dioxide, and their projection is to be well below that cap in 2014. And as we reduce sulfur dioxide, we reduce fine particles, and we also eliminate a lot of the regional haze that's of concern, especially for our Class 1 areas in the state, such as the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This slide kind of shows our trend of ozone over time, and this is statewide, and we're going to go all the way back to 1997, back about the time Bill and I started working on outreach issues. And these are for different standards. Over time, we've had, our oldest standard is the 1 hour standard. This was the 1997 standard set by EPA. And then this yellow bar will represent the 2008 standard. And what you'll see over time, and let's focus primarily on the yellow bar because that's obviously the standard that we're focused on right now. But over time, you can see those numbers trending down as our emissions have trended down. And they've trended down from a variety of activities. activities like Clean Smokestacks Act, activities like cleaner engine and fuel standards set by the Environmental Protection Agency, activities like our vehicle inspection and maintenance program or our open burning programs that are run by the state and our local air programs. And as well as those local community initiatives, whether it's improving the fleets and getting lower emitting vehicles into the fleets or educating the public so that they make different choices and emit less as they go about their daily activities. All of that has contributed over time. I want to focus a little bit on 2013 because while I'd like to claim that all of that came from all of those emission reductions, I think we need to be aware that the weather also plays a fairly significant role in ozone formation. So the next slide will talk about the summer of 2013. And it was wetter than normal and cooler than normal. And if we have wet, cool weather, that means we just have fewer ozone days. What I will say, though, is that the emissions do matter, and obviously the lower emissions helped us to be able to say that 2013 was the best ozone season on record. 2013 was actually the third wettest summer across June, July, and August, which is the key part of our ozone season, in the last 119 years. So obviously we don't get that wet a summer coming along all the time. The other thing to mention is that in terms of temperature, 2013 ranked as the 39th coolest June through August timeframe in the last 119 years. So if we get back to a more typical summer this year in 2014, we will likely see the number of exceedances go up. But again, over time, we've seen that nice downward trend due to the emission reductions. Many of our industrial sources, all of our coal-fired power plants obviously have put on state-of-the-art controls. The question becomes, where do we go for additional reductions of nitrogen oxides? And I think that's where I want to underscore the continued importance of the voluntary programs, the outreach programs that our partners like the Clean Air Campaign have been working on for years. That's going to be, I think, the key to our success as we go forward.
The Land to Sky Regional Council started getting involved in air quality issues in the mid-90s when we heard that there were issues, and so we responded to the need for a public education program. So we created the Clean Air Campaign in 1998, and we partnered with the local and state and federal air quality agencies and other groups to basically get out a simple message to the public on what they can do about air quality. And that's basically to conserve energy at home, school, work, in your vehicle. Just be more energy efficient, and that will reduce the emissions from our power plants, from our industries, and from our vehicles. In addition, in 2004, we started an effort to get our region designated by the Department of Energy as a Clean Cities Coalition. We achieved that in 2012. So the Land to Sky Clean Vehicles Coalition was designated, so we work with the Department of Energy and lots of other partners to promote the use of alternative fuels like biodiesel and propane natural gas, electric cars, hybrids, etc. Various fuels and technologies to reduce petroleum use, get off foreign oil, and reduce emissions.
One of our main components of our outreach program is to focus on educating children. And so one of our most recent initiatives is to develop a program called It's Our Air. It's targeted for high school level children, and to provide tools to the teachers that they can use to educate the kids about air quality, pollution, what are the causes, how do we solve air quality problems in North Carolina. And those modules are going to be available in June, and they're going to be available on a website, free to download.
Here in Western North Carolina, our problems are pretty much the same throughout the Southeast. Ozone and fine particles are the main pollutants that we are concerned with. With regards to ozone, as Sheila said, we mainly look at NOx reductions for ozone reductions. And when I first started working here years ago, I think it was safe to say that roughly half the NOx emissions in the county were from cars and trucks, and close to half were from our local power plant. Now with the local power plant installing controls, it's well over 70%, I believe, from cars and trucks. So as the power plants continue to put on more and more controls, we are seeing the cars and trucks as being our greatest source of pollution, but there's good news on that front with new emission standards that have gone into effect and are coming into effect that are even more stringent. So we are seeing a lot of improvements. And the fine particles also are linked to combustion and other pollutants, and those do greatly impact our regional haze issues. They obscure our mountain views in the summertime, and we're very focused on those as well. So here's our data. It looks very similar to the statewide data that you've seen already. We've seen a lot of improvements. This was the older standard of 84 parts per billion, and this is our current standard of 75. So you can see we were up over the standard and close to being designated non-attainment, but we were not designated non-attainment because of the years that were used here. We've continued to be in attainment, but as Sheila pointed out, with the EPA updating the standards, we're not quite sure where we will be with that. Same thing for the fine particle data. You can see great reductions in those levels, just like you saw statewide. I think it was 2007 was our first year here where Progress Energy had the controls on their plant that reduced the SO2 emissions by roughly 90% or greater. And around that same time, we were getting cleaner gasoline, cleaner diesel fuel. There were new emissions standards, federally required, going into place. And this is just our air quality index data. It's a little bit confusing. Sometimes we get questions. There's the air quality index forecast that comes out for the following day, and then there's what we actually see at our monitors. So this is our actual monitor data. So you can see for the years here, the majority of our days are in the good category. We have moderate days, and as far as unhealthy for sensitive groups, we have 2 days in 2012, no days last year. So again, the main message is most of the time our air quality is good, but we do have some moderate days and some days that are unhealthy for sensitive groups. And you might remember, a lot of times we get questions, people will say, well, gee, I thought we had 5 orange days last year, and you're saying, that we had 0. Well, sometimes the forecast will predict orange, but then the levels won't actually get to that level.
If you want to get the ozone or the air pollution forecast for the next day, you can go online to the State Division of Air Quality website. You can go to EPA's website. You can look in the newspaper, or you can watch the weather on local television, and they will give you the air pollution forecast for the following day. And that's determined by meteorologists that, with the state government in Raleigh, that look at weather patterns and pollution levels in areas where our weather is moving from into our area, and they make a prediction on whether it's going to be code green, yellow, or orange or red, depending on what they see. And then if it is going to be a high ozone pollution day, then you can restrict your activities. You can bring your lunch instead of going out. You can carpool. You could work at home. You can personally take action to reduce emissions on that next day if it looks like it might be a day that could be bad. Due to all of the work that's been done at the local, state, and federal government levels and by the private sector, including our utilities, to reduce emissions, that we are seeing significant improvement in air quality over the last couple of years. The trend has been lower and lower pollution levels of various types of pollution. So it's showing that all that work that we've been doing for 20 years is paid off. And we're in compliance with all the federal clean air standards to protect our health.